The Last of Us, a game initially released in 2013 for the PS3, has now been adapted and released for the, I was gonna say big screen, but at home big screen. It was easily the best video game adaptation that has ever been created. And I'm not just saying that for the sake of it, like I truly mean it. Like there has been nothing. When I think of video game adaptations for movies or shows, the only one in terms of good and accuracy that I can think of is the 1990s Mortal Kombat. Like that's the only one that truly captured and I think got the essence of what it was trying to adapt. Everything else since then has been bland, boring, a blight, or just not anything worthwhile. But this, I could just tell, because HBO, for the most part, knows what they're doing when it comes to adapting stuff, so long as they have enough source material. But when I heard Last of Us was being adapted, I immediately started shivering in fear because, you know, video game adaptations, they're never good. Never have been. Especially since the most recent video game adaptation we got was the Halo series, and well, pretty much anything would be up from there. But as soon as the trailer started rolling out for it, I saw potential, as with every video game adaptation. But this was one where I was finally like, you know what, I'll give it a shot. And so episode 1 rolled around and immediately I was enthralled. Just off the first episode alone, I could see it's just like, oh, so they're just adapting the game. Thank God, because The Last of Us' story, it doesn't need to be altered. Obviously, of course, this adaptation did take certain liberties and, you know, it told the story. It added some more stuff to flesh out certain character moments, and while it did sort of sacrifice a lot of action and intense moments that you felt in the game, I felt it was very well balanced out with drama and character moments that I think definitely added to the world of The Last of Us. Now, I know normally I delve into spoilers for my reviews, but for the sake of this one, I'm gonna keep it spoiler-free, for the most part. Of course, I'm saying that right now, it might change as I keep talking, but The Last of Us, you know, it's kind of a theme on this channel where I reveal, like every other video, that I am a huge fan of something that you never maybe would have guessed, but The Last of Us has always been a game that I sort of kind of forget about, but then like I start thinking about certain themes and characters and whatnot. I'm just like, oh yeah, this character's kind of like Joel, Ellie, Last of Us. I'm just like, oh, that game is still one of my favorites of all time. I don't know if they intentionally meant to do this, but it's like this year is the 10-year anniversary of last 10 years. Jesus. I mean, they keep releasing Last of Us on all the, like, you know, there's the PS3 version, there's the PS4 version, now there's the PS5 version. It just somehow keeps looking better and better. It is kind of scummy, you know, or whatever, because, you know, they were releasing the same game at full price every time, but, you know, I don't have a PlayStation, so I don't have to worry about that. Either way, I want to talk more about the show. Like, one of the best things was the casting for this show was done beautifully. Every single character, if you played the game at least, like you could initially identify them as like, oh, that's Joel, that's Ellie, that's Tess, that's Frank, that's Robert. Like, you could just tell. I think one of the biggest things about this game is just fucking Pedro Pascal, man. That man, I mean, he's always been a great actor. In recent times, he's just been in so much, and he's just been bringing his all to all of it. Like, that's what gave me faith, because I could tell, like, Pedro, he's definitely someone who goes after stuff that he sees potential in. Unless it's 1984. But he perfectly, I'd say, encapsulated Joel. I mean, it is sort of hard to, like, look at Pedro Pascal because, like, you know, you're sort of used to him in The Mandalorian, where he's sort of more of a softer character in that. Going into this, where he's meant to be much darker of a character, which he definitely is. You know, Joel is not a saint. Like, he has a lot of blood on his hands, especially going into the latter half of The Last of Us. But it's just, in this show, they adapted everything, like, shot for shot, line for line, for, like, the key moments, obviously. Like, definitely the last couple episodes were some of the best, and now that the show is fully out, I'm definitely going to be re-binging it, and I'm definitely also going to be going back and like re-binging playthroughs and cutscenes of the original game, because to be fair, like when this was coming out, I was like, oh, I should probably freshen up on The Last of Us lore, but I was like, actually no, because then like I'll be more surprised maybe, because it's like I remember a lot of like the key moments and like the tear-jerking moments and everything, but like some of like the in-between stuff, like I was still surprised. I think one of the things I liked most about it is just because like I was watching this like with my family, who like obviously knew nothing about The Last of Us, so like that was refreshing, just like to see them enjoy it so much as well, because, you know, obviously I'm going into it knowing like the game and everything, but of course they're going into it knowing nothing. They loved it. I mean, and they cover the entire game pretty much. Because again, it is sort of hard to do a game into a show, because like you have like all these hours of gameplay that then has to be condensed down into a show, and then certain moments have to be condensed down into episodes and minutes, and it's like you could sort of sacrifice some stuff. This one absolutely hit the mark on everything, and I think this absolutely just showed the potential that video game adaptations have, and it's just none of them have been hitting the mark. And that's why I think video games should be adapted into TV shows rather than movies, because it's like shows have a lot more time than a feature-length movie. Like, as I recently played through the Dead Space remake, and I feel like that's one that could benefit from being made into, like, maybe not like a super long series, but maybe like a quick, like 5 or 6 episode series. Of course, it's one thing to be like, yeah, just have HBO do all that shit, but I mean, like, they can do it. I mean, to be fair, of course, they had like a lot of like the game devs and people who were involved in making the game working on the show. But I mean, then just do that. Like, don't just have it be made by people who, like, yeah, it's cool if there's people who are big fans of the game who wanted to work on it. Like, get people who actually were involved. Like, get the writers, get the devs, get the voice actors. Because if you're not going to do that, then it's like, all right, you can have it take place in the world, but just don't have it be those characters. Yeah, The Last of Us show, this is just a quick review on this just because it's a really good story. Overall though, I would absolutely recommend you to play the game rather than experience the show. Again, it was refreshing like seeing my parents experience the story through watching the show, because like that was my portal into seeing like, all right, does this show work without any knowledge of the game? I mean, for them it seemed like it did, and even for me as someone who's a fan of the game, you know, of course there's always a thing of like comparing. It's like, oh, they changed this scene and whatnot, but pretty quickly on I decided to like just stop doing that and just try to enjoy it for what it is. And once I did that, I was able to enjoy it even more than what I was initially. Overall, what would I give The Last of Us, the HBO show? Overall, I would say, I wouldn't necessarily give it a 10 out of 10, just because there are certain things where it's just like, could have done a little bit without that, could have used a little more action, so 9 out of 10 sounds about right. Either way, Last of Us was a phenomenal show. It's a phenomenal game series. I'm curious to see if they're gonna adapt Last of Us Part 2. My initial thing was just like, oh, if they're gonna adapt it, they might as well just remake it. I'm curious to see if they'll do it, and if they do it, I'll be here for it. Either way, this is my review of The Last of Us. Join me for many other reviews, one-off of everything, coming soon in the future. So until next time, I'm Lancer. Thanks for watching.